I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. The time is now 5:39 p.m. on December 11th, 2024, and I call this meeting of the Ethics Commission for the City of Laredo to order. Can we do a roll call?
Guillermo Garcia.
Present.
Dr. Oscar Bonfion.
Present.
Lisa Paul.
Present.
Jose Salvador Reyes. Alfonso de la Garza. Dr. James Cortez.
Present.
Sandra Ochoa Taylor.
Present. Do we have a quorum? Okay. Let the record show that a quorum of the Ethics Commission for the City of Laredo is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. Do we have any communications from citizens?
No.
No, okay. No public comments? Okay. Regarding the next item is approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the minutes from last meeting.
I second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, raise your hand and say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? No. The motion carries. Okay, the next item on the agenda is item number 4, and that is discussion with possible action, continuance of evidentiary hearing with possible action on the ethics complaint submitted to the City Attorney's Office by Amanda Lizette Sosa Paredes and Daniel Luis Paredes in regards to possible violations of Section 2.01B, Section 2.014, Section 2.015, Section 2.018A1, and or A2, and Section 2.019 of the Ethics Code by David Paredes. Pursuant to Section 8.07C of the Ethics Code, all witnesses must be sworn in, and questioning of the witnesses will be done by the commission. Is there anyone here that is going to give testimony? Okay. I'm sorry. Can you account for it? Okay. Would you state your name for the record?
Yes, Amanda Sosa Paredes.
Okay. And you're the complaining party, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. The rules, Mr. Rodriguez, reflect that, as I recall, that the complainant is not allowed to give testimony. However, the Ethics Commission can allow the complainant to give testimony. Is that correct?
If that is correct, if you feel that there needs to be clarification from the materials that have already been provided to the commission.
Okay. All right. Does anyone want to make a motion to allow her as a witness? And is there anyone else that plans to give testimony?
No.
No. Okay.
I move to allow the complainant to testify.
Okay, so you move to allow the complainant to give testimony during this hearing. Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion will carry. Okay, can you, well, I think I swear, but I don't have the, do you have the?
Thank you.
Okay. Will you raise your right hand? Yes. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in the whole case now on trial is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. All right.
Could you please step to the, it's a red, yes, that's not the microphone. I know it's kind of,
It's this
I know
one.
it's kind of confusing.
Okay. No worries.
Okay, so last time we were here, I kind of went over the situation that was going on with Mr. David Paredes at the city cemetery. I know he is no longer in that position anymore, but there was some points that I did want to cover going forward with this case. And it was just what is already evident, you know, that there was a money scheme, which he was a participant or a key player in, because he did plan to design to generate income related to fraudulent or deceptive practices during his role at the city cemetery. I do want to point out that David and his department was never supervised or monitored during this his daily operations at the cemetery. According to one of our families, David did state recently, and this was maybe about 3 weeks ago, she reached out to him and he did state over cell phone that he never had any limitations on what he could or could not do at the cemetery. That he was able to do whatever he wanted. His department was never he never had any oversight, which is evident. The lack of supervision there. I don't know how far back the city is investigating this matter. If they are, but without a doubt, this goes back to more than 5 years. I approximate about 7 to 8 years that this does go back to, because that's when he started enriching his pockets, right, for personal gain. He started buying properties, ranches, vehicles were getting purchased, paid off. He paid off his house. He started remodeling his house. He began buying semi-trucks for his business. Mind you, this man was a cemetery supervisor who wasn't making much, right, to be able to make all these big purchases with his salary. His wife is a housewife. She has never worked. We did notice that when I did receive all these purchase orders, right, the prices were very highly inflated on the monuments he was selling to the city. I believe there were over $160,000 that the city did pay to him for these monuments. Recently, I do want to note that he was awarded another bid by the city. I don't know if y'all are aware. He was awarded another bid for columbariums at the city cemetery, and that is to put cremains, niches to put cremains. I do know that, well, he was awarded that bid, and I don't know if that is put on pause. I don't understand how the city is still allowing him to continue to do business with them after all this investigation. The report that was done, the investigation report that was done by HR. We do know, it is evident that there was never any checks and balance system there at the city cemetery. For the money that was being sold on plots or foundations, so when you purchase a monument, you have to go to the city cemetery to pay your cement foundation. So they were selling plots, they were selling foundations, and mind you, they did not have a card machine system. Everything was either cash, check, or money orders. So there was a lot of cash coming in that was, I don't know, I don't want to say it wasn't accounted for, but it doesn't, the plots that were sold, the foundations that were sold to what was getting deposited, you all might want to look into that. I know I stated last time that David was using Public Works Department, authorized by Mr. John Rodfila. They were using the department personnel to install city monuments and also using city equipment to assist him when he would install the monuments at the city cemetery. Let me see. I did tell you also for the bid that he just was awarded for the city columbariums. On previous columbariums that he sold to the city were, he was pricing them at around $16,000 each. And this time he came in really low at about $9,000 each. Why the big discrepancy? I mean, you see the discrepancy from 16 to 9,000. I'm sure granite wasn't as expensive as it is right now. But you see where he was just inflating prices to go ahead and enrich his own pockets. I do know that he was told not to price any monuments over $50,000, so they wouldn't meet the threshold for them to be placed into the city's e-bidding system. If you look at the invoices or payouts to his company, Laredo Monuments, you will see that they were all under the $50,000 threshold. I do know, recently I just became aware that Ms. Diana Gomez and Mr. Santos Segura, both from the city cemetery office, were recently terminated for unknown reasons to me. I know last meeting I was here, I did praise Mr. Segura for the efficient turnaround on our cement foundations for our customers. And from one day to the next, I did not see him there anymore. He was doing an outstanding job after Mr. David Paredes did leave that cemetery office. I also want to note, for the record, that I know in the report, you will see that there was a peace bond hearing in Judge Danny Dominguez's court, and it was a peace bond hearing brought forward by Alberto Guzman, which is a contractor of ours, used to work for Laredo Monuments, and it was against David Paredes because he was threatening him every time we would go to the cemetery to do installations or any type of work. So that peace bond did get dismissed because my Alberto Contreras, my contractor, did take his witness that time to the hearing, and Mr. Nathan Chu, which is the Associate Municipal Court Judge, did show up to represent then city employee David Paredes. This case was dismissed, even though the witness did show up to testify. This issue was brought up to Mr. Landin as soon as he came back from this hearing. And I did tell Mr. Landin what was Mr. Chu doing there. And he said, yes, I did find out, and I already warned Chu about this. So I do want to include this for the record because it was something that I did bring up to Mr. Landin as well.
Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Paredes? I have a question. Regarding that, you mentioned that there was a $160,000 bid that was awarded. Can you tell me the date or when that?
Yes, there was several of them. It wasn't 160 and just one. I believe you all have the packet. It says City of Laredo invoice payouts to David Paredes and his family members. So there was one totaling the Gold Star Family Monument installed at the city cemetery that went for $49,345.
Okay, just trying to put it in.
And then there was another Veterans Bridge plaques that were he sold to the city for $17,500. All of these going through Public Works Department, of course, Mr. John Orfila. Let's see, I think there was more included in the packet.
So there isn't anything new that you found out about since, in addition to whatever that you've submitted that's included in the packet, correct? There's nothing new. There's no new bids that have been awarded.
There was one for city columbariums, and I don't know if it happened right before or right after. For some columbariums there at the city cemetery, I think he installed 3 of them. And I did bring that up to Mr. Landin because when they were installing, David was still working there, and I was there, and I did see that Public Works showed up to help him. So I called Mr. Landin and I told him, FYI, Public Works is helping him install. And I think he made a call because Public Works scattered right after that. So he was just used to using Public Works Department to help him install, when he was on the clock.
Did Public Works ever assist you in installing
Oh,
any
no,
of your?
never.
Okay.
They're not allowed to.
How many bids were placed in the most recent bid that you're citing that was awarded? Do you know how many?
The columbariums, the ones that have not been installed?
Yes. Do you know how many people submitted or how many
Yes,
companies
it
submitted?
was, it was 3 of us. It was,
Three bids.
yes, it was us, Laredo Monuments, and I don't recall what other company. I believe it was an out-of-town company, or out-of-state company even.
Can you expand on this 50,000 threshold?
Yes, so in order, when there's a bid, if it's over $50,000, worth over $50,000, it goes through the city's e-bidding system. If it doesn't meet the threshold of $50,000, let's say like this Gold Star Monument, he sold to the city for $49,000, just right under the $50,000. It doesn't have to go, it's not sealed. It doesn't have to be a sealed bid. So his department would be able to see it, which was happening because they were telling him, and this is coming from the ex-employee who worked for him for almost 6 years, told him that he would get notified on how much was the smallest bid, so he could go ahead and beat it. He would beat some bids, maybe $500-700. Yeah, $500 or $700.
Who would accept those bids?
Santos Segura at the city cemetery, I believe, and then I think they would go through Public Works, so it would have to be John Orfila.
So if it wasn't going through an electronic,
No.
it was going through an electronic system, it would be handled internally through the city, through
Yes.
through the cemetery, the department that
They would receive
David
the,
Paredes?
yes.
So, you, is it safe to assume that you're telling us that he would basically auto-accept his own bids under 50,000?
Basically, yes. That's what was happening. That's how he was enriching his pockets. He had insight into what was happening, how much the other bids were, so he could underbid them and receive them.
Were there any ever checks and balances on this for someone to go back and say, okay, suddenly the city is less 50,000?
Yeah, no, I mean, from what during this entire investigation, we found out that there was more going on. I mean, of course, they weren't able to tell us, but they said that they had uncovered a lot more. I know the purchasing director had resigned as well. They had interviewed, I believe, Tanya Herrera from purchasing department because I believe they were all going through her as well. It was just a mess.
The purchasing department of the city or the?
Yes, at the city.
I see.
Mhm. Yes. And I believe there's emails also here in the invoices payout where I think it was between Orfila, Mr. John Orfila, and I think he was sending it to purchasing department. He says, let me see. From John Orfila to
Excuse
Mr.
me,
Miguel.
do you mind like
Pescador.
directing us to the page? Do you have a specific page in there?
Let me see.
Just so that everybody can be with you on
Yes,
the same
if
page.
you
I'm
all go
sorry.
to the section that says City of Laredo invoice payouts, says to David Paredes and family members. Let me tell you what.
Okay, yes.
So
Mhm.
it's page 7, page 8. So at the top it says Tanya Herrera.
Oh, yes, is it like an email?
Yes, it's an email. So it was from John Orfila to Miguel Pescador and Riazul Mia. And he put, it was regarding some bronze plaques. It says, I spoke to council member Rudy, he gave the okay to proceed. It will take 12 weeks for the plaques to arrive, need account number. And then they emailed, I guess, Mr. Riazul Mia. As per city manager's request, we got the quote for Veterans Bridge plaques. 8,750 each. We need an account number to move forward. So these were emails that we included as well. And more purchase orders. So then the next purchase order, you'll see the $16,200 each for the columbarium. It says 48-inch double-sided with inner and outer doors. That was a total of $48,600 that he sold it to the city. deposition date was July 5th, 2023. So the ones that he recently got awarded, I know he has them there at his shop still. I believe there were 3. So I don't know when the city is going to, or if they paused anything with those. But that was my question. I don't understand how he's still being allowed to do business with the city after this investigation. I mean, and the HR department did, in their report, and I believe this was on the last page of the report, page 8. They did, it says at this time, we will let the management team, legal team determine if they want to pursue legal charges against David Paredes and or pursue an investigation of any other City of Laredo employee that might have benefited from this business relationship. And they did recommend that this case be forwarded to a law enforcement agency for investigation of possible criminal offenses. By the way, he did tell my customer that reached out that he does not owe anything to the city now that he has left. Which I believe is why he's not showing up.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Oh, that he, one of our families did reach out to him recently, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he did mention that he does not owe anything to the city anymore. So, I don't know if that's part of why he hasn't showed up to any of these hearings.
And when you say one of your families, do you mean a family that you all are already engaged to do
Yeah, it's
business?
one of our customers.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Mr. Thayes.
Ms. Sosa, good evening.
Good evening.
I'm just trying to put this in perspective, and I apologize for the basic questions. You're Amanda Sosa Paredes?
Correct, yes.
Just out of curiosity, are you related to Mr. David Paredes in any way?
Yes and no. I say yes because through my husband, his father was David's brother. After my father-in-law passed away, they cut all any communication with us.
So your father-in-law was David's brother?
Brother, yes, correct.
Okay. And you have a competing business against Mr. Paredes,
We have a monument business, yes,
which is a
which is
competing
what he has as
business.
well. Mhm.
Okay.
And I believe all of that is noted in the report by, that Human Resources did, which is contained in the packet. correct?
Yes,
Yes.
they did an extensive investigation.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Okay. All right, that's all the questions we have. Is there anyone else that is present, including Mr. David Paredes, the respondent, to give testimony or to provide any information in this case? Can we just check outside to see if maybe he, saw the door shut and decided not to come, just to make sure that he's not there? If we could let the minutes reflect that the Assistant City Attorney stepped outside council's chambers to see if Mr. Paredes was present, and he is not present in this room, nor was he present outside the room to present any information, evidence, or to this body.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, we do have the packet, as well as the information prepared by our Assistant City Attorney, which does reflect that Mr. Paredes received notice of this hearing and other hearings related to this were in front of this body, and he has not appeared. And everything that you have submitted to the city attorney's office, along with the report that was prepared by Human Resources regarding their investigation into this matter. Does anyone,
Could we retire to executive session so that we could consult with?
okay, is that a motion to go into executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071 to get legal advice regarding this matter?
Further action, yes.
Okay, is there a second? Okay. All in favor? And, or any discussion? All in favor? Okay. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. It's 6:05 PM and we're retiring into closed session. We are back in open session. The time is 7:07 PM on December 11th. No action was taken in closed session. So we have before us a complaint, a submitted written complaint with the respondent, Mr. David Paredes, being given notice of the charges and notice of this hearing. I'm going to ask a series of questions. Is everyone in agreement that Mr. David Paredes did receive notice of the ethics complaint charges pursuant to Section 8.071B of the Ethics Code? Okay. Everyone agreeing, please raise your hand. Okay. There are everyone, okay. All right.
I'm abstaining on that issue.
Okay. All right, so there are five who have voted yes, that he did receive notice. Let the record reflect that Mr. Theus has voted, is abstaining from this vote. Are there any objections or anyone thinking that he did not get proper notice? Okay, please raise your hand. No one raises their hand. Okay, so there will be a finding that he did receive proper notice of the charges. The second question is, did Mr. David Paredes violate Section 2.01, conflict of interest under the City of Laredo Ethics Code? Everyone agreeing that that there is evidence that shows that he violated Section 2.01, conflicts of interest, please raise your hand. Okay. Let the record reflect that there are 5 voted in favor with Mr. Theus. Are you abstaining from this vote as well?
Yes, I am.
Let the record reflect that Mr. Theus is abstaining from this vote as well. Is anyone opposed this finding? No? Okay, let the record reflect that there is a finding that Mr. David Paredes did violate Section 2.01, conflicts of interest. The next question is whether Mr. David Paredes violated Section 2.02 of the Ethics Code, and that has to do with unfair advancement of private interests. I'm going to ask whether you all agree that Mr. Paredes violated this provision of the Ethics Code. If you agree, please raise your hand, showing that you agree that he did violate Section 2.02. Let the record reflect that there are 5 who have voted that he did violate Section 2.02. And Mr. Theus, you're abstaining from this. Let the record reflect. Anyone disagree? Okay, there being no disagreement, then there is a finding that Mr. David Paredes violated Section 2.02 of the Ethics Code. Moving on, is there a finding that Mr. David Paredes violated Section 2.04, which is use of confidential information by improper disclosure or use of this confidential information under the Ethics Code. If you agree that he violated Section 2.04 by improperly disclosing or using confidential information, please raise your hand that you agree with this finding. Okay. Let the record reflect that there are 3 who have voted in the affirmative to be a finding. If you disagree that he violated Section 2.04 of the Ethics Code, please raise your hand. Okay. Mr. Theus, you're abstaining?
Mhm.
Okay, so we have 3 that voted that they're to make a finding, 1 abstention, and then we have 2 that aren't voting. So we would need 5, so that fails. There will be no finding. Okay. The next question is whether Mr. David Paredes violated Section 2.06 of the Ethics Code, use of public property and resources, whether Mr. David Paredes violated Section 2.06. Please raise your hand in the affirmative if you believe that the evidence supports a finding that he violated Section 2.06. Okay. Let the record reflect that there are 5 who have voted in favor of making this finding, 1 abstention, Mr. Paredes. Is there anyone that disagrees that he violated Section 2.06? Okay, that there will also be a finding that he violated Section 2.06, use of public property and resources. Okay, are there any other Ethics Code sections that anyone else would like to add? Possible violations? There being none raised, we'll move on to whether sanctions should be addressed. As you all know, this body has jurisdiction to authorize or assess sanctions. Some of them may be subject to review by the city or city officials. But does anyone want to make a motion regarding the assessment of any sanctions?
I have a question going back to the sections.
Okay.
2.09, prohibited interest in contracts. Letter A says, no city official or employee shall have a direct or indirect financial interest in any contract, purchase or sale with the city.
Okay. There is a point raised by Ms. Sandra Taylor as to whether David Paredes violated Section 2.09, which provides that no city official or employee shall have direct or indirect financial interest in any contract, purchase, or sale with the city. Do you all agree that there was evidence to support a violation by Mr. David Paredes of Section 2.09 of the Ethics Code?
If I may, on letter C, section 2, it does mention a spouse, sibling, parent, child, or other family member related within the 3rd degree of consanguinity or 2nd degree of affinity to a city official or employee, prohibited in section 2.09C1 above.
Okay, and there being evidence in that, the information submitted by the complainant was that it was a family member, I believe it was a son, that was engaged, was doing business as under the entity Laredo Monument Company, and that would be the violation. Is that what you're saying? Okay. All right, again, under Section 2.09, prohibited interest in contracts, specifically it's 2.09C2. Do you all agree that Mr. David Paredes violated this section of the Ethics Code? Please raise your hand.
For point of clarification, Commissioner Paul, it would be 2.09A, and then there is a presumption that is laid out by C2.
Okay.
So it would be 2.09A.
Okay, so 2.09A, is there, do you all agree that, well, let's take a vote whether he violated 2.09A. Okay, there being 1, 2, 3, 4. Mr. Thayes, you're abstaining?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. So let there show that there is, Form 5 voted in favor. Yes,
No.
yes. Anyone disagree? Okay, there being no disagreement, there will be a finding that he violated section 2.09A.
Commissioner Paul, another point of clarification, I apologize. Just wanted to ask, there were findings based on evidence? Were those findings based on a preponderance of the evidence standard for presentation of evidence?
Yes, okay.
And we can make it general, it doesn't have to be, we don't have to
Yes.
go through everything again.
Okay, so do you all of the findings that we have made thus far, do you all agree that these findings are made based on a preponderance of the evidence? If so, please raise your hand. Okay, let there show that there are 5 that are voting yes, any voting no. Okay, Mr. Thayes is abstaining?
I will abstain on this one also.
Okay, so let there show that there are 5 who voted that, yes, that there be a finding that by preponderance of the evidence for each of the violations thus far.
Just point of order, just a question. Was Ms. Sosa sworn in when she testified before you?
Yes, she
Yes.
was,
Okay,
sir.
that's all I needed to know.
Thank you, Mr. Thayes.
Okay, moving on, if there are no more violations that you all would like to discuss. There being none, we will move on to whether this body should assess sanctions based on those violations.
I have, I'm sorry, if I may. There's also on Division 4, persons seeking discretionary contracts. There's disclosure of parties, owners, and closely related persons for the purpose of assisting the city in the enforcement of provisions contained in the city charter and this code of ethics. An individual business entity seeking a contract or sale from the city is required to disclose in connection with a proposal for a discretionary contract on a form provided by the city. So it goes on to identify if, the identity of any individual who would be a party, to the discretionary contract, any individual or business that would be subcontractor or,
Correct me if I'm wrong, because we've heard a lot of information in our packet and during Ms. Sosa Paredes's testimony, but an individual or business entity seeking a contract, it's my understanding that Mr. David Paredes did not seek a contract from the city, but
What
I
was
may
the
have
family?
overlooked something in the packet.
Commissioner
you're
Paul,
correct.
I would agree with that statement.
Okay. Okay. But you've brought it up, so we will take a vote. And do we believe that, that Mr. Paredes violated section 4.01, person seeking discretionary contracts? Is there a preponderance of the evidence that he violated section 4.01? Anyone believes that the evidence shows that? Please raise your hand. Okay. Okay, let there show that one has voted in favor or saying yes, that there is a preponderance of the evidence to show that. And those who disagree that there is not a preponderance of the evidence that Mr. David Paredes violated section 4.01A, please raise your hand. There are 2.
Well, I'll make it 2.
Or 3. Okay, 3. We don't have a majority on any of it, so, I mean, it's going to fail. Yeah. All right, so are there any others? Okay. move on to sanctions. We do have the ability to recommend and impose certain sanctions. Is there a motion or any discussion regarding whether this body should impose any sections or any sanctions?
There's a number 8, the basic things to start off is, so the letter of reprimand the Ethics Commission may issue to any person, whether or not an official or employee of the city, a letter of reprimand when it finds that the person has intentionally or knowingly violated the code of ethics. If you see on the packets, there's also 6 and 7, lots of letters of admonition and notification.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I've got a cold, so I'm having trouble hearing a little bit because my ears are a little bit stopped up. Are you saying that one of the things that you're seeking that this body imposes a letter of admonition?
I'm thinking one of the 3, 6, 7, or 8, depending on what the feelings of the committees are.
Okay, so 6 being a letter of
Page
notification.
55. Sorry, I don't know if it's on the packet that you all have in front of you.
It's section 8.08,
Eight- eight-
F8, if I'm not mistaken.
8.08. And those are letter of notification, letter of admonition, letter of reprimand, referral to ethics training, but you're saying specifically, letter of admonition,
A letter of reprimand.
reprimand, I'm sorry. So we would issue a letter of reprimand, he's no longer, to any person, whether or not an official or employee of the city. Do they have to be an official or an employee to get a letter of reprimand?
Whether or not an official or employee of the city. I mean, the way I read that is you don't have to be an employee or an official of the city.
It just says any person, whether or not an official or employee, okay.
Any person.
Okay,
I think a letter of reprimand, but again, there's different, it seems like there's different mens rea for 6, 7, and 8, especially 7 and 8. 7 and 8 is, it could be unintentional or inadvertent, which would be a letter of admonition. Number 8 would be this body voting to say that this violation was done intentionally or knowingly.
okay, all right. All in favor that we impose the sanction of issuing a letter of reprimand to Mr. David Paredes for his violations? Okay, let the record reflect that there are 1, 2, 4. We need 5 for a quorum, or a majority, sorry, and we don't have that. Okay. All right, are there other sanctions that anyone wishes to raise or
Section
discuss?
8.08, F5, a civil fine of up to $500.
Okay. Are you stating that this body should impose, or that it's your motion that it be a civil fine in the amount of $500?
Yes.
Okay. All right, everyone who agrees that based on the findings that we've made, that we should impose a civil fine in an amount not to, or $500. Right, let there show that there are 5 who have voted to assess a civil fine in the amount of $500. Mr. Thayes, are you abstaining?
Yes, I am.
Okay, anyone who stating no, there are no, so that finding assessment will be made. All right, are there others?
Section 8.08. Number 3. Disqualification from contracting or lobbying.
Okay, this provision would disqualify Mr. David Paredes from contracting with the city. Okay.
But I would like to recommend a term of 1 year.
And just for clarification, your vote, if that is the motion and it does pass, this would be a recommendation for debarment. This body does not have the jurisdiction to debar. any companies from entering into contracts with the city.
Okay. Point noted. This would only be a recommendation. So, Ms.
Point of
Taylor?
order, Madam Chair. Who is this department? It says, letter A, the Ethics Commission finds that any person, their employer or agent has intentionally, knowingly violated any provision of the Ethics Code or has intentionally assisted in violating or has violated. The Ethics Commission may recommend to the City Council that the person be prohibited from entering into any contract with the city or prohibited from lobbying on behalf of clients before the city not to exceed 3 years. It's a very, very basic question where the subject is David Paredes.
Yes, so, point of clarification, yes, it would be that I guess, the finding would be that we recommend that it be David Paredes in his individual capacity. Is that correct, Ms. Taylor?
Yes, ma'am.
Finding that he has intentionally and knowingly violated any provision of the ethics code, that we recommend that he be disqualified from contracting with the city of Laredo for a period of 1 year. Okay. So I will ask you all, do you all agree that we should recommend that Mr. David Paredes be disqualified from contracting with the city for a period of 1 year? Okay. We show that there are 5 who have voted to recommend this sanction, that being a quorum. Is anyone opposed? No. Mr. Thayes?
Abstention, please.
Abstaining? Okay. All right, so that will be recommended in our conclusions. Are there any others?
This is a recommendation that the city departments, if they're not already, that they have a code of ethics training specifically, and especially this department, the cemetery department,
Okay.
if they are not doing so already.
So is it your motion that we recommend that we require city employees to attend ethics code training? Do you know which employees, or is it across the board?
I would say all the departments.
Any discussion? Okay. All right, so I will ask you all to vote whether, after finding that that Mr. David Paredes has violated the ethics code, that we recommend to the city that they require all city employees to attend ethics code training. If you are in favor of this, please raise your hand. There being 5 voting in favor of this, imposing this recommendation. Mr. Thayes abstaining. That is a quorum, so that will, it passes.
Commissioner, does this apply to me and my colleague, Ms. Cynthia? I'm just joking. City employees.
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
All city employees.
He'll be the one giving the training.
If you're not getting it already.
All right. Any other sanctions that this body wishes to discuss, deliberate?
What about requesting criminal investigation if it applies? The Human Resource Department, I believe, we recommend that they
8.08 G does allow for this commission to recommend to an appropriate law enforcement agency criminal prosecution under the local government code section of 171. There was a finding that there was a conflict of interest. After looking at section 171 of the local government code, an intentional violation of that provision is a class A misdemeanor. So that this body, if there is if the motion passes, could recommend that the city possibly just refer this to local law enforcement. Could be Laredo Police Department, of that nature.
And with that, I guess, recommendation that it be, you know, to the appropriate law enforcement agent, we could give them a copy of our findings and all of the evidence that we considered in making those findings to law enforcement so that they could consider that in deciding whether to prosecute.
That is correct. It would be a recommendation from this body to law enforcement, and law enforcement will do with the case whatever they wish within their law enforcement discretion.
All right. Okay, so there is a motion that we also recommend under section
8.08.
8.08G, criminal prosecution, that we may recommend to the appropriate law enforcement agency, criminal prosecution based on the findings that we made during this hearing. Everyone who agrees that we should impose this recommendation or include it with our findings, please raise your hand that you affirmatively agree. Okay, so that we have 1, 2, 3. All right. All opposed, please raise your hand. Okay. Mr. Thayes, are you abstaining?
Yes, I am.
Okay. The motion will not carry. We do not have a majority voting in favor of criminal prosecution. Are there any other sanctions? I think we've kind of gone through all of them. I do think that we should, as part of this, you know, what we considered sort of the basis for these findings, because we did impose, you know, what I consider to be some very serious sanctions against Mr. David Paredes. But I will say that based on, you know, the information presented to us, the fact that there was a city employee who used his position to benefit, you know, a member of his household, or had a conflict of interest that he failed to disclose, because there are provisions in there that say if you work and you have a family member that has a business that's doing business with the city, you have to disclose that he didn't do that. And apparently, according to the testimony given by the complainants and in the information given to us, that it didn't just happen, it happened over a period of time, a long period of time. And also there was information that he was using city resources, including city employees communicating with other city employees during city time. And I think those are all very serious. It's a very serious matter that we take very seriously. And I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything else.
I would just like to state that it's very disheartening that people that have been here for so long working with the city would take it upon themselves to do things like this, knowing, or, you know, hopefully he read the ethics, code of ethics, and would know that he should not have been doing those things. And I'm hoping that we can send a message to the rest of the city departments so that they'll be aware, if they don't understand what is a violation of the code of ethics, that if they get the proper training, they will know exactly what they should or should not be doing. The city is owned by the community. It's our public funds that are being used. So when things like this happen, they're not taking the money from the city, which is a separate entity. They're taking money from all of us.
Right. Yes, and I think as a city employee, you know, part of that is, I mean, and what this body is doing here is to preserve the confidence that the public has in our, you know, city employees, right? And so I think this was all called into question. And, you know, the ability of the public to have confidence that our employees are doing the right thing. If they've got a conflict of interest, that they disclose it and it's handled properly according to the rules. And that did not happen in this instance. And there were other businesses that were trying to do work with the city and that weren't able to. Yes.
I would like to make another comment. Mr. Perales was asked to join us, and he could have come to present whatever type of information he had that would have contradicted what was presented to us, or if he had a different point of view or different information. But unfortunately, he chose not to do that. So we just worked with the information that we were privy to.
Right. Okay, does anyone else want to add anything else to the discussion? Okay. There being nothing further to add to this, then we will conclude the hearing and the findings. And so what will happen is that there will be written findings that, along with the sanctions, we will put all of that in writing, and you will get a copy of that. The complainant will get a copy of it, as well as the respondent. There being nothing else further on the agenda, is that correct? Do we have any other business before us? Okay. Then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, is there a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries, and the time is 7:37, and we are adjourned.